So we missing an assignment 4 and a quiz. Yeah, we're missing us. Assignment. So here's what we're going to do for those 2 things. So,
Everything online. Everything online, sir.
fine. So we don't have time to do a quiz. And so what I'll do is this, is that on Friday,
This one or next one, sir?
This Friday I'm going to post a review sheet for our test 3. So that review sheet, you all will fill it out and submit that as a PDF. Right? Submit that to me. You all have a week to do that. Right? You all have a week to do that review sheet. And then for the last quiz, quote unquote quiz, I will have you all develop a study guide and submit that for quiz. Right? So the last quiz, you all have a study guide. So I'll write down the board real quick so that because once it's ready, the board is set. Tablet of Moses. So assignment 4 will be a practice test, right? A practice test for test 3, right? So a practice test 3, and I'll post that on Friday, and you won't get until Friday. This Friday is April something, April 28th, and it will be due next Friday, May 5th, right? So it will be due next Friday, May 5th. You all will have to upload it to Moodle, right? And then quiz, it will be quiz 5, will be develop at least I want to say, do I have to give you all a page limit or something?
Yeah.
At least 3 pages. I want to say 3 to 5 pages study guide.
For the exam, sir.
For exam. Alright? And that will be due the Sunday before your exam. So I think your exam is April 15th.
For me,
May 15th. May 15th. May 15th. May 15th, and then, so that will put, if May 15th is your exam, then I think it's going to be May 14th. So that will be, I think it's Sunday, May 4th. Sunday, so that's just 5. Sunday 4th is 5. Alright, so those are our last assessments other than test 3. Test 3 will be the other thing that I'll also add as like a quiz 6 will be your attendance that you'll have been coming to class. Alright, so that's those are our last set of assessments. Everybody good with that? I actually like, anyways, yeah, so and then remember this summer is organic too. I'll talk about that once summer starts. I think we're going to think about it right now. Alright, so just know the organic 2 labs are pretty good. They're pretty fun, they're just long. I mentioned some stuff. Alright, so I just want to review some of the common names for benzene. We have, these are required, that you guys will have to know these for the exam as well. So like phenol will have a hydroxyl group, toluene is with methyl group 1 there. You have aniline, which is the amine. Then you have anisole methoxybenzene. Don't really use this one too much. But benzoic acid benzaldehyde for short. And styrene is this is for polymers. So let me just circle the ones that I really want you all to kind of know. So this one, this one, this one. Right? Those are kind of our common ones that I want you all to kind of be familiar with. Alright? So just looking at a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to look at what happens when we substitute on the benzene we have specific names that we give those groups, right? So the three names we have are ortho, meta, and para. So I'm going to use those terms a lot today, ortho, meta, and para, for us to understand that we have two groups on the benzene ring, where that second group is. So the first group is always usually written on top. Right? This one is kind of written on the second, but basically the first group is counted as carbon 1, and the group that's next to it will be our ortho group. So these two, you can have ortho on this side, and you can have ortho on this side. So it's basically for the carbons, right? Meta refers to carbon 3 of that benzene ring, right? So that's where this group second group here. And para is opposite. So para is completely opposite the initial group, right? So for example, we have ortho dichlorobenzene, or in this one we have meta. So the M represents the meta chloroperoxybenzoic acid. And then for this one, para nitrophenol. So phenol is our group 1, and then the para is the nitro. Right? So those are just the examples of how we do all this substitution. So remember ortho and para. I'm going to use it a lot today, so just kind of think about it. Alright. So if you have 3 or more substituents, then you use the numbering system. Right? So 2 substituents, you use the meta and para. 3 or more, you end up using just the numbering system. Right? So for this one, you have 2,4-dinitrophenol. Again, the phenol acts as the carbon 1, and then these two are 2 and 4. Right? Any questions on those? All right. That's kind of how we right. So the difference between like phenyl and benzyl, right? Phenyl indicates that the benzene ring is sort of attached. The benzyl group has an additional carbon, right? I don't want to focus too much on this, but it's just like one of those weird like little rules that is like super unique. But again, the difference between a phenyl compound and a benzene compound. And I say that because we have some substituents that will be added to a benzene ring, and we just have to kind of know the difference. Right. So now let's talk about some aromatic compound physical properties. Obviously, we already explained that aromatic compounds are very stable. And because they're stable, they're also very symmetrical. Alright? They pack better into crystals and they have aromatic points. The other thing about aromatic compounds too is aromatic compounds bring rigidity to our bring rigidity to structures that have multiple aromatic compounds. Right? The other thing is the boiling point of aromatic compounds are dependent on attachment movement. Now what do I mean by that? And this mean like this. Like if I have an aromatic compound and I have, say I have chlorine on this side and I have another chlorine here, right? So for example, I have a chlorine here and so forth, right? Now remember, chlorine is more electronegative, right, than carbon. So what it's going to do, it's going to pull electrons towards itself, right? So if I look at the overall dipole moment of this compound, it's going to be direction from here, like that. So this is the overall dipole moment going in that direction, right? So it has a bit of a dipole. Everybody kind of see that, right? Kind of see what I'm talking about? Yeah? Alright? Now say for example, I do something like this, where I put the chlorine atom here and the chlorine atom in the para position, right? What you see is this dipole moment that exists here and this one that exists here. What's going to happen? They're going to do what? What's going to happen with these two dipole moments? What are they going to do? One is pointing up, one is pointing down. What's going to happen? They're both the same energy, both the same electronegativity. What happens? What's the difference between this and this? What's going to happen? positive charge, a dipole moment on this bond, right? Chlorine pulls electrons, same thing here. Because it's sort of on this side of the molecule, I create a dipole moment in a diagonal direction, right? Here I have the two chlorine atoms opposite each other. So what is happening? What's the difference in this dipole? They will cancel out. They will cancel out. Your gut, your intuition should say, oh, one is pointing up, one is pointing down. It's going to cancel out its effects, right? It's going to cancel out effects. So the dipole moment up is going to cancel out the dipole moment down. So then this has no dipole moment, right? Which will be different than this one, where I have chlorine here and a chlorine here. Where do you think the dipole moment is going to be pointed? Right, this one. So that is even a stronger dipole moment. Do you all understand what I'm trying to say? So the fact that where these substituents are determines the boiling point. So a higher dipole moment. So these two, this one especially will have a higher boiling point, because what a dipole moment does is that because now I have like a partially negative charge here and a partially positive charge here, if I have multiple of these, the other version of this will then just line up here and create sort of this interaction and hold it together. Right? So that's really what we're saying, is that the boiling point increases because we have another interaction in our substance. Right? So, right. Density of aromatics are then more dense. Again, the density is because they pack better together. Right? So the better that they pack together into crystals, they will be more dense. They will also have higher melting points. So the synopsis is aromatic compounds tend to have higher melting points, boiling points, and density. Generally insoluble in water. Now, if you have enough hydroxyl groups on that thing, it can resolve it for the most part. Right, so let's talk about electrophilic aromatic substitution. Right? So remember I showed you in last class where when you try to add bromine to benzene, it didn't, right? It ended up creating a substitution instead of an exchange. So I want to kind of go over what this reaction is, right? So, alright. What I want you to focus on as I go through these slides, I want you to focus first on what the electrophile is, right? So what is this benzene ring going to attack, right? That's the first thing I want you to focus on. The second thing I want you to focus on is the sigma complex. So a sigma complex is a transition state. So this is a transition state, right? So that transition state has a positive charge. You can see a positive charge on it. Right? So it's not an actual stable compound, but it's a transition state between it, right? Now, remember I said aromatic compounds are very stable because the pi density, pi electrons are moving around and sort of right there, right? It's going to take something that is extremely electrophilic to cause those electrons to move and break, right? Because for you to have a reaction, you have to break that circle, right? But to break that circle, look, you see that the circle is being broken right here. To break that circle, you have to have an extremely electrophilic compound, right? So that's where we talk. If we have a strong electrophile, right, then we can get this transition state, this carbon ion, right? So that's what we're going to focus on a lot, is determining what kind of electrophile we have and then showing what that sigma complex is going to be. So this is called the sigma complex. It's a resonance stabilized carbocation, right? Alright. So aromaticity is regained once you take off that proton and the electrons move back in and create our happy again substitution. Alright. So this is an example of what I'm talking about here, where you have a strong electrophile it breaks, and then you have this resonance stabilized carbocation ion. Alright? Now this is a pretty stable sigma complex, right? Once that electrophile takes the electrons, you create this stable complex. But based on where that positive charge is, it determines how this thing substitutes. Alright? So what do I mean by resonance stabilized? Well, if I first have my carbocation ion there, the electrons can move here to create this carbocation ion. And then the electrons can move again there to create that carbocation ion. Right? So again, notice that the carbocation ion is at different points. Right? And that's what it means. You have three different places like that positive charge can be. Right? So once you have that, you go ahead and take a proton and then it closes back, and then you get your substitution. Okay? Any questions so far? Any questions you'll have on this one? Alright. So, like I mentioned before, benzene won't react with bromine because bromine, first of all, doesn't break the bond by itself. Bromine is not a strong enough electrophile to break the bond, right? So it doesn't happen. So you need a catalyst. And what this catalyst is doing is the catalyst is creating a strong electrophile complex, right? So the catalyst is going to create a strong electrophile, and by having that strong electrophile, then you break aromaticity. Right? So you break the aromaticity, which means you get a negative enthalpy reaction. Let's go. So let's see step one. So these are part of the mechanism for electrophilic aromatic substitution. Alright, because I see some of you all lost already, right? So what I want you all to think about electrophilic aromatic substitution has two steps. Creating strong electrophile, which we're going to show here, step one. And then the second step is then the resonance stabilized sigma complex where the attack happens, right? So that's the two steps I want you all to focus on. So the first thing you notice is that we have to create a strong electrophile. So what is happening is that iron can accept electrons because iron has like a positive charge a little bit. It accepts electrons, and then look at what happens by it accepting electrons. This bromine right here is being pulled on two sides. It's being pulled, electrons are pulling it from this side, electrons are pulling it from this side, creating this strong positively charged bromine. Once that happens, then you get your the activation of the electrophile, which will cause the aromatic compound to go ahead and attack it, right? So the way how we get this strong electrophile is using Lewis acid as a catalyst. Right? So Lewis acid is our catalyst that helps create this electrophile complex. Right? So what the aromatic ring is going to attack is right here. That's what it's attack. So let's see how that happens. So step two now is now going to be the strong electrophilic attack. So what you see is that aromatic compound is being broken right here and attacking that bromine, which then takes the electrons back. So then you get this FeBr4, and now you get this sigma complex, right? One thing I want to say about mechanisms, always make sure you balance your charge. So in this one, this is neutral, positive, negative, cancel out. Here, positive, negative, cancel out. So make sure you draw everything that it has the correct neutral charge there. So you break that, you end up having this positive charge. So I want you all right now to draw the other two versions of this sigma complex. Right now in your notes. Go ahead and draw it. Draw the other two versions of this exact same sigma complex. Remember, it's a resonance structure, right? So go ahead and draw it real quick. here, which create a version of this with positive charge here, or you can go ahead and pull those electrons here, which creates another version of positive charge here. Right? The thing is that none of those really make a difference in what the final product is, because either one of these complexes will still give you the same product. So that's what we sort of showing is that the hydrogen will then get taken by this FeBr4, which pulls the parts, which pulls the hydrogen away and then gives us the FeBr3. Notice our catalyst is produced again. So remember, the point of a catalyst is to be used to do the reaction, but then you get it back so you can do the reaction again. Alright, so that's the point of the catalyst. It's not used up. So we don't need a lot of catalyst. This thing pulls back down, creates the substitute benzene and HBr. Everybody following that, right? So that's how we have the steps in. So the first major important step I want you to remember is how to make this super electrophile, and then you make this sigma complex. Alright. So now let's talk about sort of the energy diagram for that. So in that energy diagram, you have your reactants, your transition state, and your products. Now, the transition state happens when you make this intermediate. So this is our intermediate. So we have a transition state of breaking the bond and creating the intermediate. Then you have sort of the second transition state of where you're starting to pull this hydrogen away. Once you pull the hydrogen away, then you get the ion. So this, guys, is our rate limiting step. So making the intermediate is our rate limiting step. Alright, so making that intermediate is our rate limiting step. Now, what I want you all to see, right? So for those of you all that will eventually become organic chemists, which I hope some of you all will be, the way how we make this happen a little quicker is you actually lower this energy a bit. Alright, so if you lower this energy a bit, you can sort of pull this, make this. So you be more stable, you can make this carbon ion, the better it will be for your reaction. Alright. So now let's look at some other examples. So that was bromination. So we can chlorinate it. The difference between chlorination is that we can use aluminum chloride, which is usually used, but you can also use the iron chloride as well. Alright, so notice the catalyst matches the ion we want to substitute. Now, iodination is a little bit different. That thing requires some a little extra stuff like nitric acid to produce this iodide cation. I don't really have to go too much in this mechanism. But the main thing I want you all to get at this is that it's creating a strong electrophile. You want to create a strong electrophile. That is the point. The point is for us to create a strong electrophile. We say that because by itself, iodine, chlorine, bromine aren't strong enough to cause the aromatic compound to react. Right? So that's sort of what we're doing. Alright, question so far? Probably not because you're sleeping on. Alright, so let's go through this example here. We're going to predict sort of the main products of this bromination of this thing here. So to brominate this, I'm not going to go through that question again. Let's move on to the next, because I'll never give you all something like that. Sorry, I left it in the comments. Alright, so let's talk about nitration. So nitration of benzene now is the combination of nitric acid and sulfuric acid, right? Again, the whole point is for us to create a strong electrophile to cause this aromatic ring to break. Right? So the reason we add nitric and sulfuric acid is we're going to create a strong electrophile, right? Now this sulfuric acid acts as a catalyst, and it allows it to happen at a lower temperature, and you will see how that works. Alright, so this homies are our strong strong electrified. This is nitronium ion. So what does a nitronium ion look like? It looks like this. This thing, super electrophilic, right? See this nitrogen right here? Because these oxygen atoms are more electrophilic than them, more electrophilic. What is the word I'm looking for? What is it? Electronegative. That's the word. More electronegative than nitrogen. It's pulling the electrons away from the nitrogen. So now this nitrogen is pretty electrophilic. It has little electron density. So now an aromatic compound like benzene is now going to be like, oh snaps, that thing looks nice. I'm going to go react and take that nitrogen, go and attack that nitrogen, right? That's the only way it happens, right? So for us to do that, we have to react nitric acid with sulfuric acid to cause that reaction. Right? So this is what it looks like. So this is the first step, guys. So you have to make this first step, right? So this is sort of like two different steps in activity nitronium ion. So the first thing is that one of the hydroxyl group on the nitrogen goes and attacks one of the acidic protons and sulfuric acid. When that happens, you then get water. See that water right there? Things going to pop off. That water pops off, creates H2O. Now this, look at this sulfuric acid. Once it loses that hydrogen, it now becomes a negatively charged base almost, right? So you get the removing of that hydrogen, right? Because this is a pretty acidic proton. So that now creates our nitronium ion, right? Now that we have our nitronium ion, like I said, goes and attacks and attaches right here. And to make the final product, then take the same sulfuric acid that lost its proton, is now going to take another proton right here, another hydrogen. Boom! Takes that hydrogen, snaps back to the aromatic ring. We get all the nitrogen. Right? That's really what happens. So the sulfuric acid is produced again in the end. The water that you see as a product is the result of creating the strong electrolyte. So I'll go back to the original reaction. Notice our original reaction. We have water, we have our nitrobenzene, and we have sulfuric acid as our catalyst. We reproduce sulfuric acid, but then we produce water. This product is made from making the strong electrolyte. It's not made from the aromatic alkyl substitute. It's literally only made when we combine these two together to make that strong electrolyte. Right? That's made up. Alright? So that's it. Any questions so far? Alright, so that's our signal. Alright, so now let's look at a reaction where we could reduce the nitrate group to an amine group. And to do that, you simply just use, so this is not nitration, this is just reduction. And all I want you to kind of to remember this is if I'm going to reduce this, meaning that I'm taking off these oxygen, I'm replacing the oxygen bonds with hydrogens. I use something like zinc or tin or iron in the presence of hydrochloric acid, right? You don't need to know the mechanism for this. You kind of just remember that you can use that to change it to an amine group in that sense, right? This, guys, is the best option for adding it to chlorine. So we kind of give you all the practical way of doing this. So remember how I gave you all like reaction schemes and stuff like that? So for example, if I tell you, all right, go from benzene there it is. Go from benzene to amino benzene, right? So to go from here to here, you have to do two So the first thing you'll do is you'll go from benzene and you'll make nitrobenzene. That's the first step that you do. And you do that using the nitric acid and the sulfuric acid, right? So then you get nitrobenzene. Then, now that you have a nitrobenzene, you simply just reduce it using like iron and hydrochloric acid, and you get your final product, aminobenzene. Right? And that's how you end up getting your final product. Right? So notice again, to go from here to here, it's not like one road. You have to go through a step to get to that final. Sorry, my mark is dead. I don't even want to do anymore. Like, I feel like it would be wasted to open up the markers on this one. So anyway, so that's how we go to that. Any questions on that part? Like I said, you don't need to know the mechanism for this, right? What it really is that these iron and these metals are sort of allowing oxygen to bond to it, and it can bond to the electron. Right. So now let's look at sulfonation of benzene. So what sulfonation of benzene is just sulfuric acid, and in this case, sulfuric acid itself makes its own sort of strong superelectrifier, right? So using itself, right? So we're going to use sulfur trioxide as the electrifier, and that is made from the sulfuric acid sort of reacting with itself, right? Now, what happens is that 7% of the mixture is this, right? So if you have strong concentrated sulfuric acid, it's not 100% sulfuric acid. It's actually a mixture of sulfur trioxide, which is a strong electrifier, and sulfuric acid. So that is what we call as fuming sulfuric acid. So what benzene does is, in the presence of this fuming sulfuric acid, it can attack that strong electrifier and create this sulfonation. So the product, the end product is called sulfonic acid because we need the hydrogen on there, right? So let's look and see what happens. So again, the green represents our strong electrifier. Just like how this nitro group is nitronium ions, super electrophilic. This is even more electrophilic. That's a sulfur atom with 3 oxygens attached to it. That thing wants to react with benzene. So once that exists, boom, reacts with benzene, creates a sigma complex. You then have the HSO4 minus ion, take a proton, boom. But what happens here is this still has a negative charge, so this negative charge will go and take any protons that are in the system, right? Now, one thing I want to mention, guys, is notice that all of these are reversible reactions, meaning that you can have sulfonation, but just as easily you can go back to the benzene. Alright, so you it's not a great way in making this, so usually when you have the sulfonation product, you have to react it quickly with something else, alright, to kind of try. Alright? So, those are probably only things. So again, overall, reaction, electrophilic aromatic substitution. Alright, so to do electrophilic aromatic substitution, step 1 is make super electrifier. Alright, so we make a super electrifier. That super electrifier then makes or reacts with the benzene to make a sigma complex. And then the last step is just deprotonation. Alright, so all of our mechanisms that we've talked about so far for electrophilic aromatic substitution involves these 3 steps. We created the strong electrophile here. This was already in the system. That strong electrophile is being attacked by the and benzene to again create a sigma complex. That sigma complex then gets deprotonated to form our final product. And those are the three steps. So think of your mechanisms like that, right? So that's how we look at this. Right? Questions? Alright. So like I said, sulfonation is reversible and you can reverse it. If you add heat to the system, you push it in this direction. If this thing cools, if you add heat to the system, you then desulfonate, and then you kind of have to reverse the process. So it is reversible. That's why we try not to heat these things up too much. So we do this in like cold temperature sometimes. But concentrated sulfuric acid. I'm not going to talk too much about the mechanism here. It's pretty straightforward. Actually, not really, but it's the aromatic ring as these electrons goes and it opens up again to a sigma complex, and then that goes on like also. I'm not going to focus so much on this. Alright. So now we talk about nitration of toluene, and in doing this, we're going to add a second group to our benzene ring. Now what's going to change is our sigma complex. Our sigma complex is now going to look differently. Alright, and that the version of the sigma complex creates where these things are substituted. Alright, so let's see how that happens. Alright, so we'll talk about activators and deactivators, but something that's an activator simply causes this to react a lot faster. Right? So notice we have a distribution of the amounts of each substitution pattern. Right? So you have the ortho, the para, and the meta. Ortho is the most dominant. The reason it's the most dominant is both the ortho and the para are stable. Right? They are the ones that it prefers. But because there are two ortho products, because remember, ortho means this product could also be these are the same thing, right? So because of that, I have 2 times the amount of ortho products, right? In para, I only have one version of the para product. So because I only have one version, that's why it's 36%. Right, compared to the ortho, which are 2 versions. So each version is 30%. So when you combine those two, you get a 60% product. Right? So that's really what it happens. It's mostly the ortho and the para substitution. We'll see why this meta version is not so useful. It all becomes, all talks about the sigma complex. Alright, so let's look at the sigma complex of each. Alright, so what I want you all to look at here, right? This benzene ring can break at any of these 3 double bonds. And they're not really double bonds. So say for example, this double bond breaks, then my nitro group is going to attach here, right, in the ortho position. When I have that, I have a positive charge that stays on this carbon cation. Now, guys, what is the difference between this carbon cation and this carbon cation? What's the difference? What, Emily? Say, tell me what. It's a secondary versus, what is this one? No, that's a tertiary carbon cation. So which one is more stable, guys? Secondary or tertiary? Tertiary. So what I'm trying to get at is that by making a tertiary carbon cation, your reaction happens faster because it wants to make the tertiary carbon cation, right? The reason it can do that is because this is the double bond that's broken. You all see that? Now, if I break this double bond here and add the nitro group here, the initial version of the carbon cation is secondary. But I can make a tertiary carbon cation simply by moving that electron and creating so the electrons can move here, creating a tertiary carbon cation. So notice again, we can make a favorable tertiary carbon cation for that sigma complex to get our ortho carbon. Right? Now look at what happens when instead of the nitro group, when we break this bond, instead of this nitro group being here, we then put it on this group here. Notice all the resonance structures are all secondary carbon cations. Right? They're all secondary carbon cations. And the reason they're all secondary carbon cations is, look at how I look at it. So if I have a positive charge here, this is my initial positive charge. Put the electron there, I get this. If I move my electron here, I get this. It never, the positive charge never ends on that carbon. Right? So we never get the positive charge to make a tertiary carbon ion. And because of that, this is the least likely version of our substituent. Right? So that's because of the resonance structure that we did. Right? So, like I was showing here, is that the ortho and para positions, right, are lower in energy than benzene and than the metal position. So by doing an ortho and para, you actually get a better signal complex using toluene. Right? The metal position will be a higher position, so this will. So in order of which one gets substituted, this is more likely to get substituted than this one than that one. So that's why toluene is considered to be an activator. It's an activator because it's more likely to form the substituted product than just regular. Right? So both of these are the same energy, but then when you add the nitro group, you end up getting the product. So now let's sort of look at the stabilization of alkyl groups. Right. So now let's look at what happens, right? So by having an alkyl group, we are actually stabilizing our sigma complex. So that's why we get mainly ortho and para position for our products. Now notice the thing switched. Look at this, it's switched. Instead of us getting 60% ortho product and 30% para product, we end up getting 60% para and 30% ortho. Did anybody think of a reason why this is more favorable? Less interaction. Because this is a bigger group, guys, this bromine doesn't want to sort of interact with that bigger group. So because of that, the bromine would prefer to attach furthest away from that ethyl group. And because of that, that's why we get the majority of this product. It has nothing to do with the resonance structure or sigma complex. It's more regarding the interaction at the time, right? So again, it's still activating substituents, and it's making it more active. So let's look at the sigma complex of what happens. This is a different one. So now let's look at using a methoxy group. So here we have oxygen with some lone pair electrons, right? When this breaks, it creates a carbon ion here, right? Notice this is a tertiary carbon ion, but even better, it creates an especially stable intermediate because these electrons from the oxygen, right, sort of draw it. The electrons from the oxygen move down and create that very stable. So this is even better at stabilizing our sigma complex. Because of that, now I can go ahead and get a tap of the nitrogen group. I can do that here and I still get the same sigma complex, right? The reason is because my initial version, I go ahead and bring the electrons there, and then I can go ahead and put the electrons on that, and then I get my especially stable right? So resonance stabilized by the ion, right? So with that said, let's look at what happens at the meta attack. So at the meta attack, again, we create this positive charge. Notice, just like in the toluene, the positive charge never ends up on that carbon. So if it doesn't end up on the carbon, it's not going to create the stable carbon ion that we had in the other examples. So that's why meta attack is even less likely to happen, right? Because we don't get as stable a stable complex, right? So that's how we get it. Right. So we end up getting we can get a tri-substituted version where you take the bromines and you can substitute them to the ortho and para positions. Alright? So now let's look at aniline. Aniline does the same thing. So what I want you all to do right now is, again, I want you all to draw what is what type of sigma complex is going to form when this attacks one of the bromine ions. So draw this and draw the sigma complex for formation of this. We just get it all started. So I have this bond right here. H2. I want you all to show me when this bromine gets attacked. Is it going to attack there? Right? What happens when that attacks? What are the sigma complex that's formed from this attack? That's what I want you all to show. Show me it right now in your notes. Just do it in your notes real quick. So what happens when that aniline goes and attacks it? Showing all four resonance structures. apart, right? And when that bond breaks, guys, if the bromine attaches to this carbon, the other carbon now becomes what? Positively charged. Does everybody see that part? Everybody see that part? When we break a bond, one side gets the atom, the other side gets the positive charge, right? Now because bromine is not going to attach to where that nitrogen is, not going to attach there, we have the positive charge right there, right? What I want you to show when you do resonance structures is that there's a lone pair of electrons right here on that nitrogen. Right? It's drawn for you at the top. What I want you to see is that what do electrons want to do? Where do they want to go? Where there's a what? What do electrons want to do? Go where? There's a what? Positive charge. Why are you so afraid to say that? Like, you all know, like, it's common sense. The electrons that are negative want to go where there's a positive charge. So if there's a positive charge next to the atom with electrons, it's going to move there. So I want you all to see that. This nitrogen is next to the atom with the positive charge. So the electrons are going to want to move there. So when that happens, it creates a compound that now has a double bond with a nitrogen, and then the positive charge is now where that is. Do you all see that? That's what I want you all to see. Is that that positive charge then goes there, so now you have a stable carbon ion on that side, right? And oh, I still have to put that. Alright, so that's still have that. So then what happens again? Because of that stable charge, there's a proton right here. So then there's sort of thing like this, and negatively charged bromine. It goes and takes that proton and boom, moves those electrons back down, and then the electrons that are here move back to where the nitrogen is. That's what I want you all to see. Listen. The resonance structures, drawing resonance structures, help us see the flow of electrons. That's what I want you all to kind of see. Electrons are going to flow wherever there's a positive charge. Now, to know that this bromine is going to take this hydrogen, is that the hydrogen, it's being made hydrogen bromide. So that's where that hydrogen is. Bromine takes it. The electrons that are in that bond are going to move. The reason it doesn't move here, the electrons don't move here, is because there's already a double bond there. So it's going to move over to this side where there's a single bond, create a double bond, boom, those electrons move back up, you get it back up too. Right? And then that happens 2 more times. So another bromine will break a bond here, create that sigma complex in this proton. Right? So the summary of the activators are that all the activators are things that have any sort of lone pair of electrons to donate in. That's a really good activator. So these are some examples of compounds that have good activators. Because they have these lone pairs, also these lone pairs, lone pair, lone pair, lone pair, lone pair, it helps make that really nice group that creates these sigma complex, right? So anytime you look at a benzene or aromatic compound with a group that has lone pairs, you end up having. So those are the summary of activators. We'll talk about the activators next class, so we'll end right here. So those are. So next week Wednesday we'll meet for our last